Díomh cóide úsle agus níla geisteach úra cléig, so tá agam gúil sé seaamh. It'll just be an hour's speech, just to put Ambassador agus ban Fraser a cóide úsle, tá mé Harbheith sásta a bheith an seo I bhar ggóúdar an ocht, mar uachtar an na hÉireann má céad cuairt efigúil sa bhreatan mhór. Ba bhatlam buíochas ó crí a go bháil leis an Ambassador Fraser agus a hÉireann fad má chun féin agus Brian a socht failtiú an tróna agus na socraí agus olbháin fad a rinne sibh do mo chuairt go London agus Leeds an ggéadaing. Tá sagam go bhfuil daoine ó phobal na hÉireanna bailí an seo tróna ní díreach ó ceantar London ach go leir tíre freisin, deisceart Sasana agus ón mratan bheag. Tá míle fáilte romh go léir. Ambassador and Mrs. Fraser, a cóide úsle, I'm absolutely delighted to be here and have the privilege of being with you as the 10th President of Ireland on my first official visit to Great Britain. On behalf of myself and Brian, may I thank Ambassador Fraser and his team for the hospitality for this evening and for all the arrangements. I know these arrangements didn't happen by accident, and thank you very much. Agus búla bos mór don Ambassador. Our two countries are inextricably linked on so many levels. England is our nearest neighbour, and we share the same seas. And for many, in both our countries, there is an interwoven personal and family history. Tá ar pobl fitse fuche I síle céile leis na cianta. Tá nasc córsantachta ardrin cosú le nasc cluine agus cosú le héin clán tá difriocht andrin freisin. For centuries, our history was one of colonizer and colonized, with all of the complexity that brings. Indeed, we recently concluded the decade of centenaries, commemorating our revolutionary period, at the end of which Ireland became an independent, sovereign state and took her place as an equal amongst equals in the world. The decolonisation of Ireland, however, was not only about land and law. It was also about the decolonisation of our minds. That process in itself was challenging, but has over time allowed us to take confidence and pride in our culture, our language, and our identity. This process of reclaiming our identity could not happen, of course, without the contribution of the Irish in Britain. You did that in so many ways. For example, and I personally remember this, the remittances that were sent over to keep us going at home. And they amounted to an estimated £4.8 billion in the period from 1940 to 1970. And they were absolutely invaluable to us. They contributed to the education of children, they saved farms, they helped keep communities alive, and indeed are still very important. And I don't think it's something that I or we can ever forget. Often, when they sent home that money, they had very little themselves, but they believed in something greater than themselves, something bigger, and education was an integral part of that. Moreover, at a time when our music and culture were undervalued at home, the Irish community in England kept it alive in pubs, in clubs, and in their homes, and did so after long and exhausting days of work. Cuirdan ar teanga dúchas an baile I gcuimhne dún. Cuireann ar teanga mothúcháin ionan nach féidir a bhíniú. Tá orm spéiclí a chur orm ag an puinsiú seo. I have lost the battle. Cuireann ar teanga mothúcháin ionan nach féidir a bhíniú. Is nasc I lenar dír dóchas, lenar star, lenar sinseir. Is cút áthas agus bródam mar uachtar an na hÉireann an bara a táfuin spéis agus sim sa Gaeilge I measc ar pobl an seo sa bhreatan. Creidim gur ciocras chun ceangal a dhéanamh len ar naidhreacht agus chun tuiscint níos deimhne a bhaint amach ar an muintir Arab asdómh atá a spreaga. Ireland's diaspora strategy 2026 to 2030, the third in sequence, is the government's formal response to these contributions of our diaspora in England and elsewhere. It is an acknowledgement, a public acknowledgement and commitment, an acknowledgement of the value of our diaspora and what we owe you, and that has taken quite some time. Indeed, the first significant step was taken in the 1980s with the establishment of the DIAN, the Roof Committee, which oversaw the funding of Irish welfare centres, mostly led at that time by the Irish chaplaincy, and supported, of course, by the Irish government. Then in 2002, the Task Force on Policy Regarding Immigrants published its report, and finally we couldn't avert our eyes anymore. And the title of that was Ireland and the Irish Abroad, which obliged our country to confront the reality of the lives of our diaspora. From that came the Immigrant Support Programme, the ESP, established in 2004, which has since assisted more than 900 organisations in 53 countries with grants totalling over 265 million. It is really a very important source of funding. In the UK alone, it funds community care projects, lunch clubs, cultural programmes and welfare services for those in need. Tréasliam livse atá banseach leis an cláir takeíochta seo go leor agah ag siarú go Jónach slucht wintere. Of the global diaspora, the Irish in Britain represent one of the most significant Irish communities abroad. This community, both Irish-born and of Irish descent, encompasses all ages, is represented in every walk of life, and has made a distinctive and creative contribution to every aspect of our British society. Women's contributions deserve particular acknowledgement. It is often forgotten, with the exception of 2 short periods in the 1960s and the 80s, women have always outnumbered men in Ireland's immigration statistics to Britain, often obliged to leave a country that defined morality in self-serving patriarchal terms and provided little space for dissent or independent thought. Many of these same women became nurses and doctors, amongst many other roles that women took up, and formed the backbone of the nursing profession in the NHS. Indeed, for many, Britain was a place of escape where people could live with greater personal freedom and truth. For others, it was a place where they faced many challenges and significant discrimination. The Irish community here, as you know much better than me, is a living entity that changes over time. The strength and vibrancy of our community is not just measured by census numbers. It is measured through our contributions to both British and Irish life and through our compassion for others. Of course, we simply cannot speak about the Irish in Britain without speaking of the Troubles, about what that period meant for people here. Most of you and your families lived the consequences of the horrific bombings. To be Irish in those years was to carry a weight that was not yours to carry. People lost jobs, people were accused in the wrong, innocent people were convicted in the wrong and imprisoned for years. One of the critical elements of the peace process was that a number of miscarriages of justice were ultimately addressed. The Good Friday Agreement, of course, was the culmination of that peace process and the start of the peace process for the future, profoundly changing the landscape. It is one of the most significant political achievements of our lifetime, a negotiated settlement that said this violence is not inevitable, the division is not permanent, these identities can coexist. It required courage and determination from everyone involved, and it required the 2 governments to act in good faith. Of course, it is not a historical document. It is a living, breathing framework, And when it comes under pressure, as it did with Brexit, and when Brexit placed it under pressure, Ireland defended it and will continue to do so, not because it is politically convenient, but because the alternative is simply unthinkable. Brexit was not easy for many of you. The certainty of your belonging here was suddenly less certain. Ireland worked throughout that process to protect your interests and your rights and will continue to do so. Over the past 2 years, of course, our governments have worked with determination to achieve a genuine reset in our bilateral relations. That engagement has ensured that dialogue, partnership and close cooperation once again define the Ireland-UK relationship, and that people-to-people connections we have built continue to shape and guide our decisions and our shared future. This renewed spirit of cooperation is reflected, of course, in the annual summits that are now taking place. Taoiseach to Prime Minister, at Taoiseach to Prime Minister level, and the second one held in Cork earlier this year, and the extensive and regular visits between our countries. Indeed, it is in this spirit that I had the absolute privilege and pleasure of meeting with King Charles earlier today, and I have to say the warm welcome was very much appreciated by myself on behalf of the Irish people. It was our first such meeting, two heads of state. And in our discussion, we were mindful of our unique relationship as close neighbours and our absolutely intertwined history. We reflected on the memorable state visit of Queen Elizabeth to Ireland 15 years ago, as well as the state visit here by my predecessor, Michael D. Higgins. And I was very pleased to extend an invitation to King Charles to pay his first state visit to Ireland next year, which he graciously and gratefully received. And I'm sure that he will receive I've no doubt that he will receive the warmest of welcomes, and this will represent, of course, a further deepening of our relationship as neighbours and friends. Of course, Ireland brings to all of our relationships and all our friendships the values we hold dear given our history. As a neutral, independent, sovereign country, Ireland champions those values by defending international law and the structures of the United Nations as enshrined in the UN Charter. We can be very proud that Ireland has upheld these values since we joined the UN in 1955. I am especially proud of our peacekeepers who continue to demonstrate such courage and commitment no matter where they serve, and particularly in the Lebanon at the current time. That is why Ireland speaks out. That is why Ireland speaks out in the face of injustice. That is why we will not be silent when international law is treated by those with the power to simply ignore it when they choose. We know what happens when the powerful are unconstrained. Our shared experience is our very strength. It is what connects us across the water and across the generations. It is the ground we stand on together as we continue to build side by side a more just and equal world. It is apt, of course, that we are meeting here tonight in the embassy, and I know that Ambassador Fraser will agree that throughout the decades, the greatest ambassadors of our country in Britain have been you, the members of the Irish community. It is an honour and a privilege to be here with you, to have the opportunity to meet with you, to listen to you, and also to thank you on behalf of our country. Tá méid tnú mar ochtal scur, tá méid tnú gomór le casú liv, tróna, agus exúl freisin le galore cuirteanna eile sna blianta a matrón. Accordia, I look forward on this visit and in the years ahead to building the next chapter of our relationship together as neighbours, as friends and as family, but also to use our voices in a world, a volatile world, to say the Normalising war is never acceptable. Normalising slaughter is never acceptable. And we have to use our voices to reclaim our language, not just in the sense of reclaiming our Irish language and our culture, but reclaiming our language so that language has meaning and that we can tell young people we mean what we say. Gur míle maithagibh agus go mara an ceangil adrin, gur I dreise a bhaid Corgus agus cadrubh ar náisiún ag dal. Míle buíochas díobh go léir.